2 mornings ago, just before 6 in the morning, an 87-mile-an-hour wind gust tore across the plains of South Dakota. That's 140 kilometers an hour. And get this, the storm behind it hadn't even finished organizing yet. That gust was just the first mile of something much bigger. A stalled line of storms is sliding east across the country right now, and forecasters have an actual name for what it's doing. They call it a conveyor belt. It's aimed straight at the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, and the East Coast. The Storm Prediction Center says more than 73 million people are sitting somewhere inside its risk zone. Stick with me here. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why this pattern keeps hitting the same ground twice, what happened the last time this exact setup formed, and the one signal that would turn a rough storm day into something historic. No guessing, no dramatizing. Just the mechanism, the numbers, and what to actually watch for next. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now? Are you in the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, or somewhere else that has already felt this storm pattern? Tell me your city or state in the comments, because one of the most important parts of this event is seeing how many communities are sitting directly in the path of this conveyor belt. And if you want to understand these storms beyond the headlines, the patterns, the warning signals, and what meteorologists are watching before the next major shift, subscribe. We will keep breaking down these systems as they develop and explain what the science is actually showing. And if this video helps you understand why this storm is moving the way it is, tap the like button. It helps this reach people who are directly in the path and need to understand what is coming before it arrives. Let me lay out the shape of it. Right now, the worst of the storms sit over the upper Midwest. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, pushing into Illinois, but that's not where this ends. A cold front is dragging the whole system east, into Huntington and Wheeling, West Virginia, then Charleston, then Morgantown by early afternoon, and it doesn't stop there. By the following day, the same threat shifts again, down toward Raleigh, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, and Richmond. Look, that's a lot of ground for one system to cover in under 48 hours. The National Weather Service is watching it. So is the Storm Prediction Center. So is the Weather Prediction Center. Local offices are already sending briefings straight to emergency managers, warning them plainly about destructive wind impacts. Forecasters keep using one specific word for this: conveyor belt. It's not a metaphor somebody picked for drama. It's the actual term for what happens when the winds way up high run parallel to a boundary that's stuck at the surface. Hold on to that phrase. It's going to explain almost everything that happens next. And hold on to one more thing. Back in 2012, a nearly identical setup formed, and the warning system built to catch it completely missed the moment it turned dangerous. We'll come back to exactly why. Now, why does one weather pattern get to hit the same 3 states for 2 straight days? That's really the whole story right there. Picture a stalled front sitting on the ground, barely moving. Now picture the steering winds way up high, blowing in a straight line parallel to that stuck front instead of across it. When that happens, one storm after another gets pushed down the exact same track. Meteorologists have a term for it: training storms. Think of a train stopped at a crossing. Not a quick little passenger train either. A mile-long freight train, boxcar after boxcar, rolling over the same stretch of track while you sit there waiting for the gate to lift. That's what a town underneath one of these systems goes through. Not one storm passing through and leaving. Storm after storm. Same road, same neighborhood, same river, rising a little more each time. And I want to know something from you. Before this video, had you ever heard of training storms or a conveyor belt weather pattern? Because this is one of those atmospheric setups that can affect people hundreds of miles away from where the storm actually begins. Let me know in the comments if this is something you have experienced where you live. I'll be straight with you. Forecasters can't nail down exactly where that track locks into place. Boundaries wobble a county or two in either direction. That's the real uncertainty here. Not whether it happens, just precisely where. Underneath all of that sits the fuel. Right now, the atmosphere is loaded with energy meteorologists measure as CAPE, convective available potential energy. Forecasts have it between 2,000 and 3,000 joules per kilogram. Picture a pot of water on a stove with the burner turned all the way up. Dew points are running 68 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 to 24 Celsius. That's thick tropical humidity sitting over Ohio and Pennsylvania in July. And the moisture available to fall as rain, what forecasters call precipitable water, is sitting at 2 to 2.5 inches, 5 to 6 centimeters, just floating in the air above you right now. Let those three numbers sit for a second. Extreme fuel, extreme humidity, extreme available rain, all three stacked at once. Now add the piece that turns fuel into a weapon, wind shear. That's the change in wind speed and direction as you climb higher in the atmosphere. It's clocking in above 50 knots right now, about 93 kilometers an hour. Think of it like a slingshot. The instability is the tension in the band. The shear is what aims it and fires it forward instead of letting it just fizzle out in place. And yeah, that's the exact same conveyor that spit out the 87-mile-an-hour gust in South Dakota 2 mornings ago. It's still moving. It hasn't stopped since. This thing has already left marks, days before its worst hour even arrives. First, the power grid. Storms in the lead up to this event knocked out power to 400,000 customers in Michigan, 48,000 in southwestern Pennsylvania, 100,000 in Connecticut. Second, the airports. Philadelphia International issued a ground stop, with delays spilling into BWI, Dulles, LaGuardia, and Newark. Third, the roofs over people's heads. In Philadelphia, a falling tree caused a partial building collapse and forced 12 people out of their homes and onto SEPTA buses. In Lititz, Pennsylvania, a grocery store roof gave way and the building had to be evacuated. In Maryland, a storm-sparked house fire displaced a family and their pets and did about $250,000 in damage. Thing is, none of that is even the main event yet. It's just the runway. So here's the actual open question forecasters are sitting with right now. If the cloud cover from this morning's storms clears out by around 11 a.m., the sun hits the ground directly, and all that stored up energy loads in fully by afternoon. The Storm Prediction Center has flatly called that scenario a worst-case setup. And that exact fork in the road, clouds clearing versus clouds lingering, is almost the identical decision point that fooled everyone back in 2012. We're going to sit with that for a minute, because what happened that year is the whole reason this one is being taken so seriously. Now, this is the part that turns one story into two. At the same time this conveyor belt is rolling east, Tropical Storm Bertha is coming ashore near New Orleans. And this isn't one of those coincidence stories where two things just happen to land on the same week. Bertha's moisture is being pulled directly into the same front feeding our storms on the East Coast. Forecasters expect that extra moisture to inflate rainfall totals along the Mid-Atlantic by Wednesday. That's a real physical connection, not a stretch. Bertha itself is pushing a storm surge of 2 to 4 feet. That's about half a meter to a bit over a meter onto the Gulf Coast. That's its own separate problem entirely, one we're not folding into this story. But the moisture headed our way, that's the piece that matters here. Two systems. One shared water vapor supply. One coastline about to feel both of them at once. This is not the first time this exact pattern has formed. Rewind to June 29, 2012. A derecho, that's the technical name for a long-lived straight-line wind storm, formed in the Midwest and tracked somewhere between 600 and 800 miles, roughly 1,000 to 1,300 kilometers, into the Mid-Atlantic in around 10 hours. Highway speed, basically, for a wall of wind. 22 people died. Between 3.7 and 4 million customers lost power. In Ohio alone, 1 million people were left in the dark, some for more than a week, right in the middle of a brutal 11-day heat wave with no air conditioning to fall back on. Here's what actually went wrong that day. The warnings came right on the heels of the watch, almost no lead time at all, and forecasters got fooled by a lull in the storms around midday. They read the quiet as the system dying out. It wasn't. It was reloading. By afternoon, it exploded into one of the most destructive derechos on record. That's the exact fork in the road we mentioned a minute ago. The same one sitting in front of forecasters again today. Because of 2012, the National Weather Service built something new. Impact-based warnings, ones that explicitly tag a storm as considerable or destructive, so people understand instantly how serious it is. And this time around, this event was forecast with nearly 48 hours of lead time. That's the difference 2012 bought us. Quick gut check on scale 2. Back in 2020, a similar derecho tore across Iowa with measured gusts up to 126 miles an hour, estimated as high as 140. That's 203 to 225 kilometers an hour. Terry Dusky, who ran the electrical infrastructure company left rebuilding the grid afterward, put it simply. He said it looked like a 40-mile-wide tornado had rolled over 100 miles of the state. Let's be honest about scale for a second, because it matters. This isn't a hurricane. It isn't a classic narrow-path tornado outbreak either, but calling it just a thunderstorm undersells it badly. Meteorologists nicknamed that 2020 Iowa event an inland hurricane because its gusts matched Category 3 and 4 hurricane strength. And instead of a tornado's usual damage path, a few hundred yards wide, a derecho spreads that same wind violence across a corridor up to 100 miles wide. Right now, forecasts for today top out around 70 to 75 miles an hour. 112 to 120 kilometers an hour. Serious. But well under 2020's worst numbers. Whether it stays that way depends entirely on that 11 a.m. cloud clearing question we're still waiting on. Anytime a storm gets this much attention, the wild theories show up right on schedule. So let's deal with them directly, one at a time. First one. Some people online are blaming a cloud seeding operation in Texas for all of this, calling it manufactured weather. Doesn't hold up. Cloud seeding can boost rainfall out of a cloud that already exists by maybe 20% tops. It cannot build a cold front. It cannot organize wind shear across 5 states. The particles used dissolve out of the sky within 2 to 4 hours anyway. Whatever was sprayed weeks ago was long gone before this pattern ever formed. Second, and this one's everywhere too, others claim weather radar itself is steering the storms. Also doesn't hold up. Radar only listens. It bounces radio waves off raindrops and reads what comes back. It has no way to push a single raindrop, let alone redirect a storm being steered by winds moving 60 knots up in the atmosphere. Third, the one you've probably heard the most, HAARP, some kind of government weather weapon. Nope. HAARP studies the ionosphere, a layer 30 to 600 miles up. Weather happens down here in the troposphere, the bottom 6 to 10 miles of air. Those two layers don't talk to each other. There's no mechanism connecting a radio antenna in Alaska to a storm front over Ohio. One more thing worth a quick mention, no joke, because people mix this one up constantly. Separately, space weather forecasters are watching some minor geomagnetic activity and a few solar flares this same week. That's a completely different agency, watching a completely different sky. No established link to any of this at all. Just two things that happen to share a calendar. All right, so here's exactly what to watch over the next day. The checkable stuff, not vague reassurance. Start with the clouds. Does the cover clear by around 11 a.m. Eastern? That's the 2012 fork in the road again, playing out live. Then the wind aloft. Does the low-level jet accelerate past 40 knots after 6 p.m., the threshold for what forecasters call a serial derecho? On the ground, dew stations in eastern Ohio confirm gusts of 75 miles an hour or more, about 120 kilometers an hour. And on your phone, dew warnings get upgraded to considerable or destructive, which automatically triggers an alert straight to your screen. In the rain totals, does it hit 2 to 3 inches an hour, pushing the flood risk to a moderate classification? And by Wednesday, watch whether Bertha's moisture actually overlaps the same ground twice, down near Raleigh and Norfolk. A change in any one of those moves the needle. Let's get practical for a second, because none of this matters if it just sits in your head as information. A woman named Carolyn Dorflinger lives in New Jersey, and to be clear, she's not from this exact storm line. She's from the same pattern 3 weeks earlier when it first tore through her state. She wanted an ordinary July evening. What she got was a tree crashing straight through her daughter's roof during a wind gust in the middle of a record-breaking heat wave. Nobody was hurt, thank goodness. But the roof had holes torn clean through it, and months later she's still cycling through insurance adjusters, tree crews, and roofers, as she told the Morristown Green. In her own words, quote, "A large tree fell on our daughter's house. No one in her family was hurt, but the tree tore several holes in the roof of the house," end quote. Point is, the pattern rolling east right now already did this once to her family 3 weeks ago. And it's already doing it again today, to other families who didn't get a warning 3 weeks in advance. In Blair County, Pennsylvania, first responders pulled 3 12-year-olds out of the Little Juniata River after they got swept in. In Lancaster County, a man was hospitalized after a tree crushed his camper while he slept just feet away. If you're anywhere near the Ohio Valley today, watch the sky before 3 p.m., not the clock. If you're anywhere on the coast by Wednesday, watch the rain totals, not just the wind speed. And if a warning ever says destructive, get to an interior room, away from windows, immediately. Don't wait to see it first. Pull back for a second and this stops being one storm story. A warmer atmosphere holds more water, roughly 7% more for every degree Celsius it warms. And researchers studying decades of rainfall records keep finding that the heaviest storms are getting heavier still, though the exact numbers behind that trend are still being refined. There's also an open scientific debate about whether a slowing Atlantic current is quietly reshaping the winds that steer storms like this one. Turns out scientists are still arguing over how directly those two things connect, and that's a genuinely unresolved question, not a settled one. Meanwhile, the grid underneath all of it is aging out. Large power transformers take over a year to replace. There's no real backup stock sitting on a shelf anywhere, and most of the money spent on storm resilience still goes toward basic pole repairs instead of hardening the system itself. 2011, 2012, 2020. And now this one. Same weak point in the system showing up again and again. So go back to where we started. That 87-mile-an-hour gust in South Dakota 2 mornings ago, that wasn't the whole story. That was mile 1 of a system that's still moving, still rolling east, right toward the coast. By tomorrow, we'll know if the sky cleared by 11 like forecasters are watching for. We'll know if 2012's mistake, mistaking a lull for the storm dying, repeats itself. Or if the warning system built because of that mistake finally gets tested for real and holds up. Because point is, this was never really about one storm passing through. It's a storm that forgot how to leave. We started this video with one question. Why does this storm keep hitting the same areas again and again instead of simply moving through and disappearing? Now you know the answer. The stalled boundary, the conveyor belt, the moisture feed, and the timing of the atmosphere are all working together. But I want to hear from you before you go. Did this storm affect your area? Did you lose power, see damaging winds, heavy rain, or flooding? Tell me what happened where you live, because these events are not just numbers on a forecast map. They are real communities dealing with real impacts. We will keep tracking this system, Bertha's moisture overlap, and the next warning signals forecasters are watching. Subscribe so you do not miss the next update. And if you think more people need to understand that dangerous weather is not always about one giant storm, but about the pattern behind it, tap the like button. It helps this reach the people who need the warning before the next shift happens. We'll be tracking this through the Mid-Atlantic phase, through Bertha's overlap on Wednesday, and we'll tell you exactly what it does when it finally breaks.